We believe in freedom and justice.
3 more European countries have now officially joined most of the world in recognizing the state of Palestine. What motivated them to do this? What effect might it have? And how might lasting peace be achieved in the region? In the special edition of Asia Today, we look at Palestinians' road to statehood and discuss what China believes to be the only way to bring peace, the two-state solution. Ireland, Spain, and Norway are calling today historic. Joining more than 140 member states of the United Nations, they now officially recognize Palestinian statehood. Now, these European states hope this diplomatic push could bring decades of bitter conflict closer to an end, and perhaps a sense of hope for the Palestinian people. Our correspondent Ken Brown reports from Madrid.
Hope is the key word for some European countries. Ireland, Norway and Spain on Tuesday formally recognized Palestine as a sovereign state, joining about 3/4 of UN members. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa welcomed the move on Sunday in Brussels.
3 European countries made very, very important, courageous decisions to recognize the state of Palestine. And it comes only a week after 143 other countries voted in the United Nations General Assembly to say that Palestine is ready for statehood and it's time to recognize Palestine.
With Slovenia, Malta and other nations following suit, CGTN hit the streets of Ireland and Norway to hear some reactions.
I think it's great. I think it should have happened sooner. And symbolically, it's obviously very good. How much actual significance it'll have, I don't know. But I think it does build kind of international pressure, and it does put a bit of pressure on America and stuff. So no, really good. Really happy with that.
Israelis have a right to exist, but also the Palestinian people has a right to exist.
Israel has recalled ambassadors and said these 3 countries are rewarding Hamas for the October attacks. Many leaders hope a wave of recognition might build momentum towards a truce and peace talks in Gaza. Those hopes took a step back over the weekend when Hamas launched long-range rockets at Tel Aviv and Israel responded with a deadly missile attack on a Rafah refugee camp, killing dozens. But what it has done is brought the conversation on a two-state solution to the fore internationally. Alone, countries like Norway, Ireland, Malta and Spain might not be geopolitical giants, but together these declarations have garnered an awful lot of attention, forcing much bigger players to clarify their position. Germany is the second biggest supplier of arms to Israel after the United States, and Chancellor Olaf Scholz says a negotiated two-state solution is necessary. But, like France, believes that now is not the right time. Views shared by US President Biden. Irish Taoiseach or Prime Minister Simon Harris insisted that there is never a wrong time to do the right thing. Ken Brown, CGTN, Madrid.
While the recognition of a Palestinian statehood has met with fury from Israel, its ambassador to Ireland has warned of a crisis in bilateral ties, accusing it of siding with the Palestinians.
I think there is a support for the Palestinians in Ireland. I think that's also one of the differences, that we agree that Ireland is not neutral or an honest broker in this case, because they are very supportive of the Palestinians. But what we are saying, this is not the time for such announcement on recognition.
And now following the development for us are our reporters Jen Kopstake in Dublin and Johannes Pleshberger in Oslo. Jen, we just heard the remarks of Israel's ambassador. How will Ireland navigate relations with Israel moving forward?
Well, I think it doesn't change too much. Ireland was, of course, expecting some kind of reaction from Israel by recognizing the Palestinian state. Whether they were expecting this exact strong reaction, it has come as a bit of a surprise, some of the remarks from the ambassador that we were hearing. We saw in the media here yesterday that Israel was also questioning Ireland's role as a global tech hub, saying that some Israeli investors would be thrown off by this announcement of recognizing the Palestinian state and may not feel like Ireland was a place that they would want to invest money. And I think that took some people here in Dublin as a surprise. It was also, the government has said that it was not appropriate for Israel to recall Ireland's ambassador in Jerusalem. They recalled her, along with the Norwegian and Spanish ambassadors, to basically watch a video from October 7th in the presence of the Israeli national media. And this was something that the Irish government has very strongly opposed. Now, the Prime Minister here in Ireland is going to go ahead, of course, with recognizing the Palestinian state, and we expect that the Palestinian mission here in Dublin will change into an embassy in the next few hours, and we'll see an appointment of a Palestinian ambassador. The Taoiseach, the Prime Minister, Simon Harris, saying that these remarks from Israel really are a distraction of what needs to be done, and that is to put pressure on the international community to call for an immediate ceasefire. And they see this as one step in the right direction for letting that happen.
Jen Copestake for us from Dublin. Thank you so much, Jen, for that update. And now let's also hear from Johannes Pleshberger in Oslo. Well, the Norwegian capital witnessed a historic peace agreement between Israel and Palestine in the 1990s. With that legacy in mind, tell us more about the significance of the recognition finally coming into effect.
Well, now 30 years after those historic Oslo Accords between Israel and Palestine, the two countries couldn't be further away from peace. And once again, today Oslo wants to take part in this peacemaking process by officially recognizing Palestine as a state. But there is criticism here in Norway regarding the timing of this recognition move. For instance, the protesters behind me, they are saying the recognition came far too late. For instance, Norway's neighbor Sweden recognized the state of Palestine back in 2014. But there are also other voices. For instance, the country's Conservative Party, the second biggest party in parliament, told me earlier today that they are thinking, they are uncertain whether doing this right now will bring us closer to a political solution to this conflict. And the Conservative Party also said that recognition is something that can only be done once. Also, Israel is heavily criticizing Norway for recognizing Palestine by withdrawing the Israeli ambassador from Oslo. And Israel also says that this can be perceived as an endorsement of the Hamas attacks on October 7. But Norway continues to stand behind this recognition. No, the Norwegian government says it was a necessary step to take this stance now, because according to the Norwegian government, the moderate voices in this conflict are losing ground, and Norway hopes that especially other European countries will follow suit.
Johannes Pleshberger for us from Oslo. Thanks so much for that. Well, Norway was the first country to make this announcement, followed by Spain and Ireland. And Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez was very specific with the recognition of a Palestinian state. He says it will include Gaza and the West Bank and East Jerusalem as its capital. Johannes Regev tells us more from Tel Aviv.
Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez this morning saying that the recognition becomes effective today, and what angered the Israeli officials is that he said we recognize a Palestinian state with its capital being East Jerusalem, and that caused a lot of anger here in Israel, as Israel claims that the unified Jerusalem is its capital. Israel is already angered by comments coming from Spain's vice prime minister over the weekend, saying that Palestine should be free from the river to the sea. Nothing short of that, saying that basically what the Spanish vice premier is saying is no different than the comments coming from Hamas, from Hezbollah. A lot of tension now in the relations between Jerusalem and Madrid, and this of course only became more visible today as a Spanish recognition of the Palestinian state with its capital, East Jerusalem, according to Spain. That caused a lot of anger in Israel this morning.
All right, now let's get some more analysis. And we have our guests with us, Peter Klepp, editor-in-chief at the Brussels Report, and Dr. Makram Rabah, assistant professor at the American University of Beirut. Great to have you both on our special program. So let me begin with you, Mr. Klepp. Countries such as Ireland have long voiced their support for Palestine without making the official move to recognize it as a state. What are your thoughts now on the reasons behind this change in tide, as well as the significance of these European states now recognizing a Palestine state? Are they more than symbolic gesture?
Well, I think that in every European country you could see a lot of pressure from public opinion to take a tougher stance on Israel. People rightly or wrongly perceive the Israeli actions as disproportionate. I think personally you can put question marks with that assessment, but of course in itself there's nothing wrong with taking a critical attitude towards any government, especially in times of war. Now, when it comes to the decision not only by Ireland, but also Norway and Spain. What basically is happening is that these countries say, look, we will recognize Palestine now, and we will not wait for some kind of a peace deal between Israel and the Palestinians. I mean, is that the wise decision? I'm not so sure, to be honest. Why not try to use this as leverage? First of all, for the sake of peace, which is both good for Israelis and Palestinians, and secondly, why not demand that if there is a Palestinian state that is being recognized, that it is a democracy, which is important for the Palestinians, and I find that a little bit unfortunate.
Well, let's also hear from Dr. Rabah. There's mounting legal, diplomatic, and even domestic pressure on Netanyahu, yet he remains defiant, as evidenced by his speech at the Knesset yesterday. There was very strong rhetoric from him. What do you make of Tel Aviv's reaction to more European countries moving to recognize Palestine?
Well, one has to understand that Netanyahu now is riding the wave of October 7, and he will continue to do so to try to salvage his political career. Yet at the same time, Israel has a history of not really paying any attention to what the international community or international justice is saying. Yet at the same time, I think that the Israelis realize that this idea of trying to neglect the rightful right of the Palestinians to have their state cannot just be pushed aside by saying that you are helping Hamas, because the ongoing fight now is over the idea of Palestine. I think that recognizing the right of the Palestinians and not Hamas to have their state is very important going forward, because after the killing and the mayhem that has been spread by both sides, be it Hamas or the Netanyahu government, one has to realize that the only way forward is to sit down and agree on sharing this land and not trying to implode the peace process like Netanyahu himself has on more than one occasion admitted. We have to go back to the main idea that we are no longer living in the 19th century. In the 21st century, there are peaceful ways of settling disputes. And if these disputes are not settled, Hamas will be considered a kind of very moderate militia down the road, because people are not only frustrated on what's happening in Gaza, in other parts of Palestine, be it the West Bank or even in places like Ramallah, the Israelis are not recognizing that they have to start to accept the idea of some sort of a Palestinian sovereignty, and that the international community and people in Spain and Ireland recognize the right of the Palestinian people and the right of the Jewish people to live together.
Well, thank you so much for your analysis. We'd like to thank Mr. Peter Klepp and Dr. Makram Rabah. 3 more European countries have officially joined the world's majority in recognizing the state of Palestine. And in our next segment, we look at what most would agree as the only way to peace, a 2-state solution. We'll uncover its past obstacles, viability, and what we would be left with without it. Stay with us. While most of the world recognizes Palestine as a state, and even those who have not recognized a state, they support the two-state solution, Israel and Palestine living side by side as the only way to achieve lasting peace. Julo Aman looks back at Palestine's struggle for statehood and the growing support for an independent Palestine, even in the West.
Palestine is a permanent observer state at the United Nations, like the Vatican. Its full membership has repeatedly been blocked by the United States. In April, Palestine applied again for that full UN membership. 12 members of the Security Council voted in favor.
Those against?
Once again, it was vetoed by the United States.
It's a sad day. Because of the U.S. veto, the Palestinian application for full membership of the United Nations was rejected, and the dream of the Palestinian people for decades was shattered.
Palestine's last attempt was in 2011. A committee advising the Security Council failed to reach agreement after 2 months of talks. Instead, the General Assembly granted Palestine observer status in 2012. Norway hosted the Oslo talks in the 1990s that made a two-state solution once impossible. Now, it's finally recognizing Palestine as a state.
A credible path to a two-state solution, from including the recognition of Palestine, but also the actual establishment of Palestinian institutions, and connect that to the normalization of relations between countries like Saudi Arabia and other Arab states with Israel.
Bowing to U.S. pressure, a growing number of Arab states were establishing ties with Israel. That was before Hamas launched its attack on October the 7th and Israel's response.
The siege of the Palestinian Authority, the continuation of settlements, and the relentless annexation of land are factors that cannot be overlooked in the situation we have reached today.
And Israel is opposed to any possibility of a Palestinian state.
What I want to urge is against just saying two-state solution. Why? Because there's an emotional chapter here that must be dealt with. My nation is bereaving. My nation is in trauma.
By May, Israel has killed at least 36,000 Palestinians, with thousands more believed to be dead in the rubble. And as the need for aid has increased, Israel has continued to cut the flow. Others have voiced support for two states.
They need a political solution. And this horizon is a two-state solution.
And the settlement policy that violates international law and hinders the two-state solution.
Germany, meanwhile, has been one of the biggest suppliers of weapons to Israel over the last 7 months.
Israel can only live in safety if Palestinians can live safely with dignity. And the Palestinians can only live in dignity, in safety, in freedom if Israel lives in safety.
China was one of the first countries to recognize the Palestinian state in 1988. It believes the fundamental way out of the recurrent cycle of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is to implement the two-state solution. Julo Aman, CGTN.
All right, Alice, here's some more analysis. Let me bring back my guest, Peter Kleb and Dr. Makram Braba. We also have here with us Ms. Ho Wen-ping joining us for some more discussion. Well, still, let me begin with Mr. Kleb here. Many believe that the two-state solution is a very difficult one, but probably the best possible answer to the Palestine question. What is your take on this issue, and will it be able to, this ambition, will this ambition be able to overcome the difficulties in reality?
Well, I think there's a broad consensus to have a two-state solution, which would mean self-government for the Palestinians and, of course, alongside the Israeli state. Already now we have the Palestinian Authority led by Mahmoud Abbas, and they control parts of the West Bank. And then we have the Gaza Strip, where a terrorist group, Hamas, has been, controlling the territory until October 2023. The question is, do we change much by, recognizing Palestine as a state For example, if you look at Ireland, there's already a mission of the Palestinian Authority to Ireland. This will now be upgraded to a proper embassy. So ultimately, on the ground, nothing much changes, but any leverage that Ireland had to try to, encourage the Palestinians to, not only make a peace deal with Israel, but also to make sure that there are elections in Palestine, has now gone. Mr. Abbas is refusing to organize an election, and Hamas in the Gaza Strip abolished an election after they won the election back in 2005 or 6. So I find that countries that like now rush to recognize Palestine as a means to exert pressure on Israel, I think they forget that they're not only pressuring, Israel, but they're also abandoning the democratic hopes of the Palestinians.
Well, as fighting and suffering continue on the ground, here's a look at some previous maps detailing the displacement of the Palestinian people. Now, here you can see how the borders of Palestine have systematically been reduced since 1948, a process that just began a year after the UN proposed a then largely accepted partition plan. So, Dr. Rabah, what are some of the key obstacles that have historically hindered the implementation of a two-state solution?
Well, basically the idea of recognition, previously before the PLO recognized the right of Israel to exist, Abu Ammar, or the late Yasser Arafat, was not recognized as a politician. When he did this, he moved into the realm of politics. However, after the killing of his partner in peace, here we're talking about Rabin, we have faced a number of right-wing governments which were not really invested in recognizing the right of the Palestinian people. So rather than looking at it as just a rather real estate dispute or a fight over land, it's a fight over historical recognition. The Jews on the one hand say that they have a historical right, whereas the Palestinians also claim the same. Both parties might be correct in their claims. However, the use of violence by the two sides previously and at the moment hinders any idea of living together. And the main problem is that Israel, on many occasions, especially the Netanyahu government, has used the support of the international community, particularly in such cases as what happened in October 7, to try to bandwagon the whole Palestinians as being terrorists. What we are seeing with Hamas might be the frustration of the Palestinian people, and some people who do not recognize violence as a way forward have supported Hamas because they have seen how Netanyahu has dealt with this. So the main idea is going back to the drawing table and starting by the recognition of the problem that this is not only a fight over land, but the idea of coexistence is important, and thus we can rebuild the idea or the Arab peace plan, which talks about the two-state solution, or even a one-state solution. But the key word here, ma'am, is the idea of a solution to this Arab-Israeli conflict.
Well, many countries, many Western countries actually believe in the two-state solution, but they're divided over when and under what condition they should recognize the Palestinian state. Now, Ms. He, China has always been consistent in trying to facilitate a two-state solution in resolving the crisis in the Middle East. What role should China play in this process?
Yes, ever since 1988, when the PLO, by that time it's a Palestine Liberation Organization, already declared the independence and also the state building of Palestine. So ever since that time, China became the first country, one of the first to recognize the state of Palestine. So we not only bilaterally we have a mutual recognition, and also in the international arena, like UN Security Council and the UN General Assembly. So all those international arena, China has been always constantly supporting the right of Palestinians to establish their own state. Of course, even bilaterally, when the President Abbas of Palestine came to visit China, paid the state visit, we also gave a very high this presidential level, this welcome ceremony. So this is what China has been doing, and even in this new round of this Israel, with Palestine, this conflict going on, we have witnessed very clearly. So in the UN Security Council, China support this two-state solution, and also support Palestine should becoming a former member in the United Nations. But all those, this solution, even though has been passed in a very high majority, this voting in the UN General Assembly and also in the UN Security Council. But unfortunately, we have seen very clearly that United States with this veto power in the UN Security Council and then make that resolution fail to pass. And in the UN, General Assembly, we also see this is a majority, 143 countries support this Palestine becoming a former member in the United Nations. Now we're also seeing bilaterally more and more, even European countries now join this mainstream to fully recognize Palestine as a state. So I think this is a mainstream of international society. So China, of course, we are supporting this Palestinian, their legitimate right, and also even play an important role for leading this mainstream forward.
There are questions to be answered and certainly a lot of issues to be agreed on, but given that the conflict in Gaza does not seem to be cooling down, what are some of the potential consequences if a two-state solution is not achieved in the near future? Ms. He.
Yes, the very tough reality now we have seen, even though lots of international pressure, either from UN General Assembly, this resolution, and also from UN Security Council, and plus there's more and more countries, even European countries, also join this recognition of a Palestine state. But all those pressure, but it seems cannot change the mind after Israel, now the government led by Prime Minister Netanyahu. I even heard they are saying no power in this world can change the mind of the Israel government right now. So they show very tough this kind of stance. So that's why we have seen this very tough reality continue going on. The Palestinians, because they couldn't get former member statehood in the UN. So that's why Israel can make those invasion all the way, no matter, in where, in the north of Gaza, central of the Gaza, now even push all the way to the Rafah, the southern of the Gaza. So because they don't regard it, Palestine as a state, similar like the same statehood like Israel. So I think this situation, Palestine couldn't becoming a former member in the UN, so make Palestine even lost somehow this defending power for themselves. This is also make United Nations. It's hardly to make some relevant those procedure come forward to preventing like Israel to make those ground attack to the Gaza, even to the Rafah. Now all the focus is on that very density, population density area. So that's why a lot of humanitarian crisis couldn't even release, even making it more and more serious.
Well, we'd like to thank my guests here, Ms. He Wenping, Mr. Peter Klepp, and Dr. Makram Rabah. Thank you so much for sharing with us your insights into this issue. Well, the move by 3 European countries to recognize the Palestinian state is certainly a significant step forward, and hopefully it will renew the momentum in peace negotiations and bring a sense of hope for the Palestinian people. With that, we come to the end of this special edition of Asia Today. I'm Wang Mengmang. Thanks for watching.